My head still buzzed from the wires. They said I was crazy. They were wrong. I was just angry. And I was going home to kill him. The doctors called it the grey place. It was a big, cold building with high walls. The walls were the colour of old smoke. They made me wear a thin, grey dress. The dress was rough and smelled like bleach. They gave me shocks. The shocks made my hands shake all the time. They made me forget things like the names of flowers or the day of the week. But they did not make me forget Julian. Julian was my husband. He was not a good man. He was a liar with a smooth voice. He wanted my house and my money. Blackwood Manor was mine. It was my mother's house and her mother before that. Julian did not care about history. He only cared about the bank. He told the judge I was sick. He said I talked to ghosts in the night. He said I was too sad to live outside with normal people. The judge believed him. Julian was very good at lying. He could look you in the eye and tell you the sky was green. I was a pianist. I loved the piano more than anything. I played it every day in our big music room. The music was my voice. Julian hated the noise. He said it was too loud. He said it made his head hurt. After he sent me away, he sold my piano. He sold many things. He sold my mother's silver. He sold my father's books. He sold my life. I was in the grey place for 5 years. 5 years of the grey dress and the cold, watery food. 5 years of the shocks. The shocks were the worst thing in the world. They strapped me down tight to a hard bed. They put the metal things on my head like cold spiders. Then the doctor would say a word and the machine would strike. My body would jump high off the bed. My mind would go white like a blank sheet of paper. But one thing stayed clear like a sharp stone in the white paper, the picture of Julian, his smiling face when he signed the papers that took my freedom, his cold, dead eyes when he watched the men in white coats drag me away. He thought he won. He thought I was gone forever. He was wrong. The night I left, it was raining hard. The rain was cold and smelled like wet dirt and old leaves. I did not have a plan with many steps. Plans are for smart people who have time. I was just a woman who wanted to go home. I wanted to see Julian's face when he saw me. I waited until the fat guard, Mr. O'Malley, fell asleep. He always snored. It sounded like a pig trying to breathe. I took the small metal fork from my dinner tray. I kept it hidden in the thin mattress of my bed. It was not a good tool. It was too small and too soft, but it was all I had. The lock on my door was old and rusty. I pushed the fork into the keyhole. I wiggled it. My hands were shaking so much from the shocks, I could not stop them. I had to hold my right hand with my left hand to keep it still. Click, the lock opened. It was a small sound like a mouse running, but to me it sounded like a cannon firing. I walked down the long, dark hall. The floor was cold concrete. My feet were bare and dirty. I did not look at the other doors. I did not want to see the other sad people. I just walked. I walked like a robot. The window in the laundry room was open a little. The guard forgot to close it. He was a very bad guard. I pushed the window up. It made a loud, terrible screech of old metal. I froze. I listened for the pig-snoring guard. He did not wake up. I climbed out. The window was high up. I fell hard into the mud outside. It did not hurt. I did not feel pain anymore. The shocks had taken that away. I only felt the cold rain and the anger. The anger was a fire inside the cold stone of my chest. I ran until the high grey walls of the grey place were small, like toy blocks. I ran until I could not hear the sounds of the sad people crying. I ran until I was alone on a dark, empty road. I walked for 3 days. I ate berries from the bushes. They tasted sour and strange. I drank water from the streams. My grey dress was torn and dirty. My hair was short and messy. They cut it off after the first shock. I looked like a ghost already, a very tired, very angry ghost. I thought about Julian. He was living in my house. He was sleeping in my bed. He was spending my money on his new life. He thought I was locked away forever. He thought he was safe. I smiled. It was a strange feeling. My face felt stiff like old leather. I had not smiled in 5 years. It was not a happy smile. It was a cold, sharp smile. It was the smile of a hunter. I was coming home. I saw the house from the top of the hill. It was Blackwood Manor. It was my family's house. It was big and dark. It looked like a giant sleeping animal with broken teeth. Julian had not taken care of it. The white paint was peeling off the wood. The garden was full of tall, ugly weeds. The iron gate was broken and hung crooked on one hinge. It looked sad. It looked like me. I walked down the long, winding driveway. I hid behind the big, old oak trees. I watched the house for a long time. Then I saw them. Julian was standing on the front porch. He was fatter now. His face was red and soft. He wore a nice, clean suit. He looked happy. He was laughing a loud, fake laugh. Next to him was a woman. She was pretty like a doll. She had bright yellow hair that shone in the sun. She was wearing a red dress that was too bright for the old house. This was Serafina, his new wife, the one who took my place. Then I saw the child, a small boy. He had Julian's dark hair and pale skin. He was maybe 5 years old. He was running on the lawn chasing a butterfly. Little Thomas, Julian's son. My heart did not beat faster. It just felt like a cold stone in my chest. I watched them. They were a happy family. A fake family built on the ruin of my real life. I knew I could not just walk in and kill Julian. He would fight. He would call the police. He would win again. No, he had to lose everything first. He had to feel the fear I felt in the grey place. He had to go crazy. I needed to be close to him. I needed to be a shadow in his house. I needed to watch him every day. I walked to the back of the house. The kitchen door was open a little. The cook was a big, loud woman named Mrs. Gable. I knew her. She was old and talked too much. I waited until Mrs. Gable left to go to the market. I saw her big, slow car drive away down the road. I went inside. The kitchen smelled like old grease and new bread. I found a small room next to the pantry. It was for the servants. It had a small, hard bed and a wooden chest. I took off my torn, grey dress. I found a simple, dark dress in the chest. It was too big, but it was clean. I found a white apron. I tied it around my waist. I looked in the small, cracked mirror. My face was thin like a knife blade. My eyes were too big and too dark. My short hair made me look like a poor boy. I looked nothing like Elara, the gentle pianist. I looked like a poor, quiet woman. I needed a new name. A name that meant nothing. A name that was quiet. Agnes. I walked into the main part of the house. It was dark. The furniture was covered in white sheets. Julian only used a few rooms. He was saving money. I heard Julian's voice. He was talking on the phone in the study. He sounded angry. I walked to the study door. I knocked softly. Tap, tap. Julian opened the door. He looked at me. His eyes were cold and fast. He did not know me. He did not see his wife. He saw a dirty, thin woman in a servant's dress. Who are you? He asked. His voice was sharp like a broken glass. I did not speak. I could not. 5 years of silence and shocks had made my voice a dry, dead thing. I had to keep it that way. I held out my hands. They were rough and scarred. I pointed to the apron. I pointed to the floor. I made a sweeping motion with my hands like I was cleaning. Julian looked annoyed. A new maid, Mrs. Gable hired you. Why didn't she tell me? She is always forgetting things. I just shook my head slowly. I pointed to my mouth, then shook my head again. Julian understood. Mute, you can't talk. I nodded once. He looked me up and down. He saw the dirt on my feet. He saw the empty look in my eyes. He thought I was simple. He thought I was cheap labor. He smiled a little. It was a cruel smile. Good, quiet is good. You can start now. Clean the dust. Don't touch anything important. Your name. I wrote the name Agnes on a small piece of paper I found in my pocket. I showed it to him. Agnes, fine, go clean the main hall and don't bother me. He closed the door hard. I stood in the hall. I was in my house. I was his servant. He did not know. He did not even look twice. His arrogance was a gift. It was the first tool in my revenge. I started to clean. I moved slowly. I learned the house again. The squeaky floorboards in the hall, the drafty windows in the library, the vents that ran through the walls like metal snakes. I learned the family. Julian was always in the study. He drank a lot of brown liquid from a glass bottle. He yelled at the phone about money. He was worried. Serafina was bored. She read magazines and complained about the dust. She was not a good mother. She mostly ignored Thomas. Little Thomas was a quiet boy. He played alone with wooden blocks. He looked sad. I watched them. I was a ghost in my own home. The first night I slept in the small servant's room. I did not sleep well. I was too close to him. The next day I started my work. I cleaned the study. Julian was out. I touched his desk. I touched his pen. I touched the papers he signed. I saw a small silver picture frame. It was a picture of Julian and Serafina. They were smiling their fake smiles. I picked it up. I looked at it. Then I did the first thing. I moved the frame. I did not hide it. I did not break it. I just moved it from the center of the desk to the very edge, so close to falling off. I left the room. Later I heard Julian yell, "Serafina, did you touch my desk? The picture frame, it was almost on the floor." Serafina yelled back, "I was not in your study, Julian. You must have moved it yourself. You are always moving things." Julian said, "I did not. I never touch my own things. I know where I put them." I heard the sound of glass breaking. He had knocked it over in his anger. I was in the kitchen washing a cup. I did not move. I did not make a sound. But inside, the cold stone in my chest felt a little warmer. The game had started. Weeks turned into a month. I was a good housekeeper. I was quiet. I was invisible. Julian and Serafina barely looked at me. I was just Agnes, the mute servant. They did not know that I watched everything. They did not know that I was the one making the house feel wrong. After moving the picture frame, I did other small things. I would leave a single window open in a room that was always closed. The wind would blow the curtains. I would turn one of Julian's books upside down on the shelf. I would leave a single dead flower on his pillow. Each time he would yell at Serafina. Each time she would deny it. The house was filling up with their angry words. The house was eating their peace. One night I decided it was time for the music. In my old life I played the piano every evening. Our wedding song was Beethoven, Moonlight Sonata. Julian said he loved it. He lied, he hated it. He said it was too sad. The grand piano was still in the music room. The door was locked. Julian kept the key on a hook in his study. He never went in there. The room was a tomb for my old life. I did not need the piano. In the grey place I learned to live inside my own head. I could hear music perfectly in my mind, but I needed Julian to hear it too. Before I escaped, I had a small victory. One of the nurses was kind. She felt sorry for me. She had a little music box that played a tiny, tinny version of Moonlight Sonata. She would play it for me when the doctors were not around. The day before I left, I stole it. It was a cruel thing to do to a kind person, but I needed it. It was small enough to hide in the palm of my hand. That night after Julian and Serafina were asleep, I took the small music box. I went to the main hall. The vents in Blackwood Manor were old. They were big metal tunnels that carried air through the house. They also carried sound. I opened the vent near the floor of the main hall. It was dark and dusty inside. I placed the music box deep inside the vent, right below the opening to Julian's bedroom. I wound it up tight. It started to play. Ting, 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 it sounded like a small, broken clock. I went back to my small room and waited. In the morning, Julian's face was pale. His eyes were wide and red. He did not eat his breakfast. He just stared at his coffee cup. "Did you hear that last night?" he asked Serafina. His voice was a dry whisper. "Hear what, Julian?" she said, reading her magazine. She did not look up. "The music, that song, the piano song. It was faint, but it was there." Serafina sighed a big, loud sigh. "Julian, you were dreaming. You drink too much. The piano is locked away. No one has played it in years, you know that." "I was not dreaming," he snapped. He hit the table with his fist. "I heard it. It was faint, but I heard it. It was our song." He looked at me. I was wiping the table with a wet cloth. I kept my eyes down, I did not react. He looked right through me, I was just Agnes. What would I know about music? He got up and went to his study. I heard him slam the door so hard the glass in the windows shook. I played the music box every few nights, never 2 nights in a row. I wanted him to think he was going crazy. Sometimes I would put it in a different vent, so the sound came from a different direction. One night it was in the library. The next it was in the dining room. The sound was always moving. Julian started to look tired. He had dark circles under his eyes like bruises. He stopped talking to Serafina. He just drank his brown liquid and stared at the walls. He would jump if a door closed too fast. Next, I started with the whispers. This was my favorite part. The vents were my friends, they were my voice. When Julian was alone in his study, I would go to the vent in the hall. I would put my mouth close to the cold metal grate. I would whisper one word, just one. Guilty. My voice was a dry, scratchy thing. It did not sound like me. It sounded like the wind blowing through a tomb. I heard him jump up from his chair. Who's there? Who said that? I held my breath. I did not move. I was a statue. He opened the study door and looked into the empty hall. He saw nothing. He saw no one. Is someone there? He called out. His voice was shaking. I waited, then I went back to my work. I did it again a few days later. He was in the library looking at old maps. I went to the vent in the kitchen, which connected to the library wall. She knows. This time he screamed. It was a short, sharp sound, like an animal caught in a trap. He ran out of the library. He saw me in the kitchen peeling potatoes. He grabbed my arm. His grip was tight. It hurt. You, he said, did you hear that? A voice, it said, she knows. I looked at him with my empty eyes. I shook my head slowly. I pointed to my mouth, then shook my head again. I am mute. I cannot speak. I cannot hear whispers. He was telling his secrets to the one person who could not repeat them. He let go of my arm. He looked confused. He looked scared. Of course you heard nothing. You're just a stupid mute. It's the house. The old house is making noises. He walked away, rubbing his head. He was starting to believe that the sounds were only in his mind. This was good. This was perfect. I also continued to move his things. It was a small, cruel game that I enjoyed very much. He had a favorite pen, a fancy gold one. He always kept it on his desk. One morning he found it inside one of his shoes. He had a special pocket watch that belonged to his father. I took it from his bedside table and placed it in the sugar bowl in the kitchen. Each time he would rage. He would accuse Serafina. He would accuse Mrs. Gable, the cook. He never accused me. I was Agnes. I was too simple to think of such a thing. My next target was Serafina. I needed to separate her from Julian. I needed her to be afraid of him, not for him. I knew Julian had kept some of my old things. He was too lazy to get rid of everything. In the attic, in a dusty trunk, I found a box of my old letters. Letters I had written to my sister before she died. They were full of my hopes and dreams. They were also full of my worries about Julian. I had written about his temper. I had written about his coldness. I took one of the letters. It was a letter where I wrote, "Sometimes Julian looks at me and I feel a chill. It is like he is looking at a thing, not a person. I am afraid of what he thinks in the quiet moments." I took the letter and a small pressed flower from one of my old books. It was a flower I had worn in my hair at our wedding. I went to Serafina's room. She was in the garden. I opened her jewelry box. It was full of bright, shiny things Julian had bought her with my money. I placed the old, yellowed letter and the dead, brown flower at the bottom of the box under a pearl necklace. Then I waited. A few days later I heard Serafina crying. It was a loud, ugly sound. I went to the door of her room. It was open a little. I saw her standing there with the letter in her hand. Julian was with her. "Where did you get this?" Julian shouted. His face was red and angry. "It was in my jewelry box," Serafina cried. "Who is Elara? Why did she write this about you? Why is this dead flower in my things?" Julian's face went white. He had told her I died in a car accident, another lie. He was very good at them. It's nothing, he said, trying to take the letter. She was my first wife. She was unwell. She was crazy. She died a long time ago. Someone is playing a cruel trick on us. A trick, Serafina sobbed. Is it true, Julian? Are you this man, the man she was afraid of, the man who looks at people like they are things? No, it's lies. She was insane. She was a liar, he yelled. He looked around the room, his eyes wild. He saw me standing in the doorway. I was holding a basket of clean laundry. I was just Agnes, the mute housekeeper, drawn by the noise. You, he pointed at me. Did you put this here? Are you the one doing these things? Are you the one moving my watch? I looked at him. I let my eyes fill with fear. I dropped the basket. The clean clothes fell all over the floor. I started to shake. I made myself as small as possible. I looked like a scared rabbit. Serafina rushed to me. Julian, stop it, look at her. She's terrified. She can't even speak. How could she do this? You are losing your mind. You are scaring the help. Julian stared at me. He saw the shaking, simple servant. He saw the fear in my eyes, and he believed it. He believed I was too stupid to be his enemy. Get out, he whispered. Just get out. I scrambled to pick up the laundry and hurried away, but I had heard what I needed to hear. You are losing your mind. Serafina had said it. She believed it. Julian's world was getting smaller. His wife thought he was crazy. His house was full of whispers and ghosts. He was alone, and he was afraid. He started to drink more. The brown liquid was his only friend. He would sit in his study for hours, just staring at the door, waiting for the next sound, waiting for the next thing to move. I was patient. I had learned patience in the grey place. I had 5 years of it. I could wait forever. His madness was a flower, a dark, ugly flower, and I was watering it every day. The air in Blackwood Manor grew thick and heavy. It was the kind of quiet that comes before a storm. Julian had stopped yelling. He now moved through the house like a ghost himself, his eyes always wide, always searching. He had lost weight. His expensive suits hung on him like they belonged to another man. Serafina avoided him. She spent most of her days in her room or taking long walks in the woods, far from the house. She had started locking her bedroom door at night. They were two strangers living in a house of fear, and I was the one who had built it. It was time for the final push. I needed to break him completely. I needed to use his greatest fear against him. His greatest fear was not ghosts. It was losing the life he had stolen. The new wife, the son, the money. He was terrified of being exposed as a liar and a thief. My plan now turned to the boy, little Thomas. It was a cruel thing to do. He was an innocent. He was just a small child who wanted his father to play with him. But Julian's love for his son, twisted as it was his last connection to the world. I had to cut it. I started spending more time with Thomas. As Agnes, the mute servant, I was no threat. I would bring him his meals. I would clean his room while he played with his wooden blocks. He was a lonely boy. He started to follow me around the house like a little duckling. He would hold my apron. One afternoon, while we were in the garden, I taught him a song. It was not a real song. It was a rhyme I had made up in the grey place. The words were simple. The tune was like a nursery rhyme, but slow and sad. I hummed the tune first. Him-mum, him-mum, him-mum. Thomas looked up at me, his eyes curious. I pointed to the walls of the house. I put my finger to my lips as if it were a secret. Then I whispered the words, my voice a dry rustle of leaves. The lady in the walls is sad and cold, a story that was never told. She plays a song for all to hear and waits for someone to come near. I hummed the tune again. Thomas, like all children, loved secrets and songs. He started to hum it with me. In a few days he knew all the words. He would sing it to himself while he played. The lady in the walls is sad and cold. It was a chilling sound, the innocent voice of a child singing about a ghost in his own home. Julian heard it for the first time during dinner. The meal was silent as always. Julian was pushing his food around his plate. Serafina was staring out the window. Suddenly Thomas started to sing. His small, clear voice filled the quiet room. A story that was never told. Julian dropped his fork. It hit the plate with a loud clatter. "What is that? What are you singing, Thomas?" Thomas looked at his father, surprised. "It's a song about the lady in the walls. Agnes taught me." He pointed at me. I was standing by the wall, ready to clear the plates. I kept my face blank. Julian's eyes locked on me. They were full of fire and ice. You did this. You taught him that song." Before he could say more, Serafina stood up. "Oh, for heaven's sake, Julian, it's a nursery rhyme. You are scaring the boy. You are scaring me. Everything is a conspiracy to you. The house is old. It makes noises." She burst into tears and ran from the room. Julian looked from his crying wife to his singing son. He looked at me, the silent, simple servant. He saw madness everywhere. He was trapped. He put his head in his hands and made a low, groaning sound. The song was the key. It connected the whispers, the music, and the moving objects. It gave them a name, the lady in the walls. In Julian's mind, I was no longer just a memory. I was a ghost, and I was haunting his son. Now for the grand finale. I needed him to see me, not Agnes. He needed to see Elara. I waited for a night with a full moon. The moonlight shone through the tall windows of the main hall, casting long, grey shadows. Julian had been drinking heavily all day. He was sitting in the dark library, a bottle of brown liquid in his hand. Serafina and Thomas were asleep upstairs. I went to the attic and found one of my old dresses. It was a simple white nightgown. It was thin and smelled like dust. I put it on. I stood in front of a dusty mirror. With my short hair and thin, pale face, I looked like a patient from the grey place. I looked like a ghost. I went to the end of the long main hall. At the other end was the library. The door was open a little. I could see Julian sitting in his chair, a dark shape in the gloom. I had practiced this. I knew the squeaky floorboards. I knew the way the moonlight hit the floor. I took a deep breath. The air felt cold in my lungs. I stepped out into the moonlight. I did not walk. I moved slowly, almost gliding. I let the white nightgown flow around me. I kept my face turned away from him in the shadow. From the library he would not see me clearly. He would see a shape, a woman in a white dress, a woman who should not be there. I heard him gasp, a wet, choking sound. I continued to move across the hall towards the grand staircase. I did not look at him. I kept my head down. I was a fleeting image, a dream, a nightmare. Then I did the final thing. I let out a soft, sad sigh. It was not a whisper from the vents. It was my own voice, thin and full of pain. It was the voice of Elara. I disappeared up the stairs into the darkness. I heard a crash from the library. The bottle had shattered on the floor. I heard him stumble out of the room. "Elara," he whispered, his voice was broken. "Is that you? Are you here?" He stared at the empty hall. He looked at the spot where I had been standing. There was nothing there but moonlight. He screamed. It was not a scream of anger. It was a scream of pure, absolute terror. It was the sound of a mind breaking. I slipped back into my servant's room, my heart pounding, not with fear but with a terrible, cold power. I had done it. I had broken him. But I did not know how broken he was. I thought his madness would be his prison. I did not understand that his madness would become his weapon. The next morning the house was silent, too silent. I left my room. The sun was shining. It felt wrong. The house should have been dark. I walked into the main hall, and I saw it. Julian was standing by the staircase. He was wearing his fine suit, but it was stained with something dark and red. His hair was a mess. His eyes were empty. He was smiling, a calm, peaceful smile. "She's gone," he said to me. His voice was soft. "The ghost, I saved them from her. She can't take them now." I did not understand. I looked past him. On the floor at the bottom of the stairs was Serafina. She was lying in a heap. Her pretty yellow hair was matted with blood. Her red dress was torn. Her eyes were open and staring at the ceiling. She was not moving. My blood ran cold. I felt a sickness rise in my throat. "The boy," I whispered. My voice was a croak. I had forgotten I was supposed to be mute. Julian did not notice. He just kept smiling. He's safe now too, she can't have him, she can't take him to the cold place, I saved him. He pointed to the living room. I walked slowly, my legs shaking. I looked inside. Little Thomas was on the sofa. He was covered with a blanket as if he were sleeping, but his small hand was hanging off the edge and it was pale and still. I had wanted revenge. I had wanted Julian to suffer. I had wanted him to feel the fear and the madness that I had felt. I had succeeded, but I had never wanted this. This was not justice. This was a nightmare. He had not just gone mad. He had become a monster. In his broken mind, he believed my ghost had come to take his family. He thought the only way to save them from me was to kill them first, to send them somewhere my ghost could not follow. I looked at Julian, the man I had hated for so long. He was not a monster, he was just a hollow shell, a broken toy. My revenge had been perfect. It had been so perfect that it had destroyed everything, including itself. I stood there in the silent house, surrounded by the ruin I had made. The game was over. I had won, but I had lost. We had all lost. The only thing left was the silence, and the man who had caused it all. He was still standing there, smiling, waiting for his reward, waiting for his peace. I would not give it to him. The silence was a heavy blanket. It pressed down on the house, on the bodies, on my mind. Julian was still smiling. He was humming a little tune. It was the nursery rhyme I had taught Thomas. The lady in the walls is sad and cold. He was happy. He thought he had won. He thought he had defeated the ghost. I looked at him. He was a mess. The blood on his suit was drying. He was just standing there waiting, waiting for the police, waiting for the end. But the end would not be fast. I walked slowly towards him. I stopped right in front of him. He looked down at me, his eyes glazed over. He saw Agnes, the mute servant. He saw nothing. I raised my hand. I reached out and touched his cheek. The skin was cold and rough. Then I spoke. It was not a ghost, Julian. My voice was a dry, dead thing. It was a sound I had not made in 5 years. It was low and scratchy, like two stones rubbing together. Julian's smile froze. His eyes, which had been empty, suddenly filled with a terrible, slow understanding. He looked at my face. He looked at my eyes. He looked at the short, messy hair. It was not a ghost, Julian, I said again. I spoke each word slowly, clearly, in the simple way I had learned to speak again in my mind. It was me, your wife, the one you put in the dark. His mouth opened. No sound came out. He tried to step back, but his feet were stuck to the floor. He was a statue of fear. Elara, he whispered. It was a sound of pure horror. Yes, I said. Elara, the one who was crazy, the one who talked to ghosts. You were right about one thing, Julian. I was coming home to kill you. He finally found his voice. It was a high, thin shriek. No, you're dead. You're supposed to be dead. You're a ghost. You're the one who killed them. I did not kill them, Julian, I said. You did. You killed them to save them from me. That is the best part of the joke. I grabbed his arm. My hands were strong. 5 years of fighting the straps and the guards had made them strong. I pulled him. He did not fight. He was too shocked. He was too afraid. I pulled him through the house, past the body of Serafina, past the room where little Thomas lay still. He did not look at them. He just stared at me. I pulled him to the music room, the room where I used to play, the room he had locked away. The door was still locked. I went to his study. I found the key on the hook. I came back and unlocked the door. The music room was dark and dusty. The grand piano stood in the center, covered with a white sheet. It looked like a tombstone. I pulled Julian into the room. He stumbled and fell to his knees. Please, he begged. Please, Elara, I'll give you the house, I'll give you the money, just let me go. I'll go back to the asylum for you. You took my life, Julian, I said. You took my mind, you took my music, you took everything. I will take everything from you. I pointed to the floor, right in front of the piano. Do you remember this spot? I asked. This is where I used to sit. This is where I played our song. This is where you told me you loved me. You lied right here. He shook his head, tears running down his face. I don't know, I don't remember, I'm sick. You will, I said. You will remember every day. I went to the wall and found the small metal crowbar I had hidden behind the curtain. I had brought it with me from the asylum. I had kept it for this moment. I knelt down and started to work on the floorboards. They were old and dry, they came up easily. Squeak, creak, snap. I pulled up a section of the floor. It revealed the dark space beneath. The crawl space, it was small, it was dirty, it was full of spiders and cold earth. It smelled like old wood and dust. No, Julian whispered. No, Elara, don't do this, it's dark, it's cold. I looked at him, my face was cold. You put me in a dark place for 5 years, Julian. You put me in a cage, now it is your turn. You will be the lady in the walls. I grabbed him by the collar and dragged him to the hole. He was crying now, he was screaming. He was fighting, but he was weak. His body was soft from too much drink. I pushed him into the hole. He fell with a soft thud. He was too big for the space. He had to curl up on his side. I looked down at him. He was covered in dirt. His face was pale. He looked up at me with the eyes of a trapped animal. You will be quiet now, Julian, I said. You will be silent. I took the floorboards. I put them back in place. I used the crowbar to force them down. I took a box of long, thick nails and a heavy hammer. Bang, bangs, bangs. I hammered the nails into the wood. I hammered them hard. I sealed him in. He was screaming under the floor. His voice was muffled. It sounded like a dog barking far away. I finished the work. The floor was back in place. You could not tell it had been moved. Only the fresh nails showed. I stood up. I wiped the sweat from my face. I looked at the piano. I walked over and pulled the white sheet off. The black wood gleamed in the dust. I sat down on the bench. It was my bench. It was my piano. I lifted the lid. I put my fingers on the keys. They were cold. They were dusty. I started to play. I played our wedding song, Moonlight Sonata. I played it perfectly. My fingers remembered. The shocks had not taken everything. As I played, I could hear him. Under the floor, he was screaming. He was hitting the wood. Bang, bangs, bangs. The music was loud. The music was beautiful. It covered the sound of his fear. I played the song all the way through. When I finished, I waited. I could still hear him. He was not screaming anymore. He was sobbing, a low, wet sound. I played the song again. I played it every night. The first night he screamed and hit the wood. The second night he only screamed. The third night he only sobbed. The fourth night he was quiet. He only made a small scratching sound, like a mouse. The fifth night I played the song. There was no sound from beneath the floorboards. I waited. I played the song again. Silence. I stood up. I looked at the floor. It was just wood. It was just a floor. I had won. I walked out of the music room. I locked the door. I put the key back on the hook in the study. I was alone in Blackwood Manor. The house was mine. The silence was mine. I was not Elara, the gentle pianist. I was not Agnes, the mute servant. I was the lady in the walls, and I was finally home. The justice was complete. It was cold. It was absolute, and it was silent. I went to the kitchen. I made myself a cup of tea. I sat at the table. I looked out the window at the dark trees. I was free, and I was home. I finished my tea. I went upstairs. I went to my old bedroom. I opened the window. The cold air came in. I lay down in the bed. It was soft. It was quiet. I closed my eyes. I did not dream. I did not cry. I did not feel sad. I only felt the silence beneath the floorboards. It was the most beautiful music I had ever heard.